the spandex and the song topics and everything. I was just like, I don't.
Just to be clear, you sing about Warhammer.
Well, yeah.
Hello, and welcome to Maiden Voyages, a podcast dedicated to analysing, discussing, dissecting, and sometimes, or oftentimes, I feel, as we go into the 21st century, commiserating the discography of the world's greatest heavy metal band, Iron Maiden. Levin's already given me looks, so I've made a faux pas. But anyway, usually we'd be doing that. But we are continuing our tangent away from the Maiden studio discography today to dig into the wider influence Iron Maiden have had by talking to other musicians in the broad metal world. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves.
So I'm Blev, an historian of sorts.
I'm Sam, I'm a writer of sorts.
And I'm Adam, a musician of sorts.
Yeah, we are joined today by Adam Blackwood, the vocalist of, I think I'm right in saying death metal band, but I lose track of subgenres, of potentially death metal band, Angron.
Yeah, I mean, almost certainly. We don't really, it's very knuckle-dragging music. So death metal is the only, you just stop it there. Yeah.
That's about, I always lose track between like death and like grind and that kind of extreme sludgy bracket of guttural wailing and dense riffery.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much delving into not much delving or experimentation beyond just death metal. But I mean, that's what we like.
Speaking of Angron, like, because we're an Iron Maiden podcast, how would you pitch Angron, or at least describe the band to an Iron Maiden fan if you were trying to get them to listen to you guys? And you know, that's a really easy thing to do.
Well, I mean, so the influence is probably not immediately obvious. I mean, we're not the most melodic of bands,
Sure.
But when it is peppered through there, it's definitely influenced by, you know, the Swedish Gothenburg bands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, At the Gates, Dissection. Those bands are definitely a huge influence on us, and those bands wouldn't exist without Maiden, in my opinion. I think Maiden, out of any other band, out of any other subgenre, is the band that influenced that sound, other than death metal bands, I guess. But so I mean, that's definitely part of our sound, for sure. I mean, beyond that, I guess lyrically, I like the storytelling element of Maiden, for sure. You know, you always feel like you're listening to a story most of the time, and if you sort of delve into the lyrics of Maiden a little bit and just find out what the songs are about. I mean, they stay true to their topics, war and which culture are we going to naively delve into? But
what are you talking about? I thought they always sensitively tackled the historical events and cultures. You know, they're experts, right?
I wonder which one's next. No, but all joking aside, I mean, the lyrics are a huge influence on me, and I didn't know a band that did that before really listening to Maiden, sort of telling stories about whether it's historical events or fantasy elements and things like that. That was definitely the big influence on me that came with Maiden, as much as the music. So that's definitely part of Angron as well. But yeah, I mean, not a huge amount of musical similarities.
I mean, to be fair, I think you did a much better job of pitching that than I expected. So you found a commonality there. And yeah, I agree with you about like if you're taking influence from the Gothenburg sound, a lot of that Gothenburg sound is like, well, what if we took the twin harmonies of Maiden, but played it all in like C and had a man screaming over the top of it? It's like, great, you've got Arch Enemy in the early 90s, so or mid 90s.
Yeah, and In Flames and Dark Tranquility, all those bands just really wore that on their sleeve, and they obviously clearly worship Maiden. And, a lot of those bands turned into something a bit different, but the influences, I genuinely strongly believe it's all Maiden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's telling a lot of those bands have done Maiden covers for one, right? But yeah, I think there's definitely like a lineage from Maiden to the Gothenburg sound to you guys in Angron over in Brighton, with your Brighton death metal sound.
Ruining it.
But I wouldn't say ruining it. Great. But yeah, I mean, I guess with a band like Angron, you guys have been together quite a while now. Like, am I right in thinking it's like 7 years ish? I've forgotten.
Yeah, no, it is really. I mean, I think we started the first sort of maybe practice or writing session we had was around, crazily, it was around 2016, but we didn't do anything for a couple of years. We really weren't, when we started, we weren't really sure what we were going for.
Yeah.
We were sort of writing thrash metal, which a lot of us had been in thrash bands before, and it wasn't really what we wanted to be doing. So for the first couple of years, we weren't that active. But once we got things together, and originally I was on guitar, I wasn't doing vocals, and we brought in our friend Josh to play guitar, and we became a 5-piece. That's when the gigs really started coming in, and we released our first EP and all that stuff. So yeah, 7 years is about right.
So that's
quite interesting what you're saying there about starting off as a thrash band. What facilitated the transition to death metal? Was that just what you realised, actually, this is what we all really like? Yeah,
basically. I mean, as I said, we'd all been in thrash bands before, so that sort of sound was kind of came naturally to the riffs we were writing, and obviously the song arrangements and stuff like that. And also we were sort of copying the Mastodon setup of nobody really being the vocalist.
Yeah.
And although that's great for Mastodon, it didn't work for us. There was a little bit muddy. So that was another reason. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved death metal. And before being in this band, I hadn't been in a death metal band, and I'd always wanted to be. And we sort of realized that was just, I don't really know, it was just a really natural progression, I guess. But we just decided that let's do something different than we've been doing before. And I mean, it's pretty obvious from the Warhammer reference of our name to those nerds in the know, that Bolt Thrower were a massive influence. I mean, it's not an original idea to love Warhammer and love death metal, but Bolt Thrower were a massive influence.
It's almost as original as being a power metal band who likes Lord of the Rings,
Yes, the two.
Not that there's anything wrong with either of those.
It's tried and tested.
Yeah. So when you made the shift from like thrash to death metal, and it sounds like you had a bit of a rejig in your lineup, what made you just focus on vocals entirely? Like you mentioned having multiple vocalists got kind of muddy, but what made you personally think, I can front this, screw you guys, I don't need a guitar?
No, well, I had, it's worth saying, I had zero technique at the time. I never tried it. We'd had a gig that didn't go well, really, as a 4-piece. This is probably only our second gig, maybe getting that wrong, but I think it was about our second gig. And we had some feedback that was some critical feedback that was probably justified. He was honest with us, and maybe it was a little bit hard to hear at the time, but it was true. And I think not having a central frontman vocalist was it was muddying things a little bit. The sound wasn't quite as clear or strong as we wanted it to be, so it was almost like a make or break, really. And I just said, well, let's ask our friend Josh to come into the band. We know he's a great guitarist, he likes death metal. We'll ask him, and I'll just try it, and it'll either work or it won't work. And fortunately, the first gig we ever played was a good gig. It was and I just loved it instantly from the first practice. And it was something I always wanted to do. And I know that's not, I mean, a lot of people do. That's not abnormal. I think everybody wants to be the front man or front woman of a band. And to be, to sort of realize that dream, as it were, was sort of the drive for me. But yeah, as I said, it was also a bit make or break. I don't know how many other, lackluster average gigs we were willing to play to keep going. But as soon as we just changed the lineup and we turned into a 5-piece, it just sort of changed everything.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's really great to hear that it just kind of clicked almost instantly. You said when you kind of took over that role, you didn't really have much technique. How did you figure out you can make those noises with your voice? Because listening to Angron's material, it's not a human noise, in many ways, right? with lots of death metal, right? But I can't do it, right? So I always wonder, how do you discover that you've got that weird sound within you?
I think when you start, all you do is you're just trying to copy other people that you like. So you're just trying to get somewhere near a sound of other vocalists that you like, and that's all you're really trying to do. Even if it is completely unnatural for your voice, you're just really trying to strive for something that you know. And then after that, as time goes on, you realize, okay, this shouldn't be coming from my throat. This should be coming from my diaphragm. And that's really once you add that element to it, then your own voice comes through. I mean, obviously a lot of death metal bands, vocalists maybe aren't the most nuanced in terms of differences, but
sure,
there's a big difference to my ears, to my jaded ears, my ruined ears, let's say. There's a big difference between Chris Barnes and I don't know, Chuck from Death, and I don't know. There's just all these. To me, these vocalists all sound incredibly different. To people who are maybe just approaching death metal for the same time, it probably all sounds the same. But yeah, once you introduce technique, you find out what your own voice can naturally do, and you just keep going down that path, really. And that's all I did. Didn't overthink it either.
So, who were the vocalists who you were trying to emulate to begin with?
I'm terrible at names, but I'm just going to name some bands. But definitely, the surname's Tardy. I can't remember his first name, but from Obituary.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
I can only think of his brother, the drummer of Obituary, Donald Tardy. And I only know Donald Tardy's name because he was Andrew WK's drummer.
Yes, he was.
It's John Tardy.
Yeah, that thing about Andrew WK is still hilarious to me. It's so good. I mean, I love Andrew WK.
I am dyed in the wool Andrew WK diehard, and I could do a whole podcast about Andrew WK, but probably shouldn't pull out that thread too much, to be honest.
Yeah, that one will be niche. But I am a massive fan. So yeah, when I found out that was crazy. But I'm trying to think. I mean, definitely the more deranged sounding vocalists.
Yeah.
Is it just Jeff from Carcass?
Yeah. Jeff Walker.
For sure, yeah. It's Peter from Asphyx. I don't know if you know Asphyx from Holland.
I don't, but Blevins nodding.
I know the name, I need to go in on it.
He was also vocalist. He was vocalist for Bolt Thrower for 2 tours or something. I never recorded with them, but for sure them. I'm trying to think who else. There's a band called Hooded Menace from Finland. They sort of played death metal through the lens of almost like hair metal, but his voice sounds deranged. They're great. And yeah, I mean, I don't go my lows aren't as anywhere near him, but they're great as well. So yeah, I definitely think the more less human sounding vocalist is kind of where I've tried to go. I mean, black metal is in there a little bit. I try to sort of maybe achieve some of that in the sound. But yeah, again, just sort of with Obituary, the vocals are just so much part of that sound. I mean, they're as much as any other element of them. Is that voice is just insane to me. It doesn't sound like anyone else.
Yeah, and now that you mention Obituary, I can definitely see the influence on your vocal style. And yeah, like you said before, there's actually such a range of different extreme metal voices that you can go into across the genre. So yeah, it's interesting because I mean, I mean, obviously we spend a lot of time talking about Maiden and singers like Bruce Dickinson, but actually there's so much technique and variety in extreme metal vocal styles that, it's like you said, if you're unfamiliar with it, it can all kind of sound the same, but it's like getting accustomed to beer or coffee. You keep wanting like something stronger, and you also get more used to the variance between things, right? Like it's sort of acquired tastes. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you sound great on the latest EP. Like, it's just a very demonic, monstrous voice. It's cool.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, really happy with how the vocals came out for this one. So, yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Well, so this is your second EP, Deathlands, which came out in March or April. Time is an abstract concept to me at this point.
Oh, I think March. I should know, shouldn't I? Yeah, I think it was. Oh, I think it was February. It was February. It came out. Yeah, middle of February. Yeah.
And so, how did you guys go about recording that? Because it'd been, I think, 6 years since the previous EP. And I mean this with the greatest respect, but you're not a huge band. You're an independent band.
No.
So like, I'm always curious how sort of, bands who are at your level go about trying to record an EP. Like, is it all home recording? Are you doing it on someone's laptop? Are you booking studios? Like, talk us a little bit through the process.
It's kind of everything, really. So, I mean, obviously the sort of main thing behind the approach for this one was just budget. We really needed to make sure that we could make this realistic without breaking the bank, remaining realistic about what we wanted to achieve as well, and putting in the time to make sure that it sounded as good as possible whilst remaining within that budget. So we recorded the drums. Tom, our drummer, recorded them at a studio. Joe Linden, who produced and sort of engineered and mixed everything for us, he recorded the drums with him in a studio in Worthing, and then the rest of it was all done home recording. So I think the guitars and the bass were all tracked over a few weekends, like 2 or 3, and then the vocals. I wouldn't suggest this, but I did it in a day.
Oh, Jesus! Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's also why I'm incredibly happy. So it was a long day, but they came out really well. So we just made sure we were doing things as cost effectively as possible, and that's the boring answer, really. But that is, as you said, we're not a big band. We're trying to get the best sound we can whilst remaining realistic about what we can do. This isn't a full-time job. We've all got jobs, kids, mortgages, blah 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 blah. But we still love doing this, and we want to do this as much as possible. So that would also be the advice to any band: is you can do this stuff at home. You really don't need to. Other than drums, you really don't need to be recording in a studio. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, but it's not a necessity.
I mean, that is absolutely not a boring answer. I think one thing that's really changed about music in the last 20 years is that the ability to record in completely different ways without studio expense on the same level that it would have been before is quite a democratizing thing, where smaller bands can just do it without having to like get a record contract or take out a huge loan or whatever. So it's always really interesting to hear how different bands approach it. And I think that the increased flexibility of recording is only a good thing. I mean, I guess the trade-off is it means that everyone can record. And so there's just so much more music out there, which is both exciting. But I imagine from your perspective, that's also quite daunting. Like how do you get your band sort of seen versus the 100 other bands who are also releasing music at the same time?
Yeah, it's death metal right now specifically is just it's a saturated market. It's I do strongly believe that we're in like the best, I think, other than maybe, I don't know, 89 to 94, I think we're sort of living in the best period for death metal, where there are so many bands releasing so many great albums that, in I think 10 years time we'll look back and go, wow, this was a real peak
Yeah.
Maybe not the peak, but another peak of just bands releasing incredible music. So it is saturated. And even in the UK, there's a lot more really good death metal bands that are around now than there were even pre-pandemic. When we were like playing shows then, we used to play in a lot of black metal shows, and there weren't a lot of death metal bands coming through. There was a lot of black metal and a lot of grindcore, and we were sort of always on these bills. But now there is a lot more death metal out there in the UK. So, even here it's hard to stick out.
Yeah.
But one of the obvious things is to just when we get a show, when we play shows, play well. We played 2 shows in April, Bristol and Brighton. We played with a band called Mutagenic Host from London. Those guys, they're great. They were headlining in Bristol, and that was such a good show. Sold out.
Was that the Black City Records?
Yeah. So it was their birthday show. So it was a great show to get. It was the first one we got actually on the bill.
Really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a really good turnout. It's the sort of gigs that it was, especially with being the first one back after such a long time. It was like, oh yeah, this is why you travel across the country.
Yeah.
On a coach to be in Bristol for a few hours to then go back that night to London and stuff like that. It's like, this is why you do this. So it was a great show. And then we played in Brighton with black metal band called Necronautical, who they play quite regularly. I think they're in the UK and do some tours and stuff. And it was another good show. And that's where we're based. So it was good to play a hometown show. A lot of people came out for it. And yeah, the better you play live, the more people take notice. I do also just believe word spreads as well.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say to any band is, it might not be the most appealing thing, but like, create an image, push yourself, be busy on social media. That's made a huge difference for us this time around. We used to be didn't have any sort of social media presence, but we've really stepped up this time round, and we've seen the difference it makes in terms of people that are actually engaging with music, people buying the EP, people buying merch. It's made a big difference. So although it might not come naturally to some other bands, if there's one of you or a couple of you that can take that on, I would just really recommend just going really, really hard on it, because it really does help.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And like, this is me sort of flicking into my day job. So I work in marketing as a day job, and like, you guys have clearly done very good social media marketing for the EP. Like, you've got a very clear visual identity. You're creating lots of really nice bits of content, even though I hate the word content, but that's what it is, But yeah, I think that point about bands of your size having to market themselves is a really crucial one, because that's sort of part of the fundamental shift of doing stuff off your own back. Is you're not just recording everything off your own back, you're the one trying to promote it, you're the one trying to get it out there, much more so than having like a label or a PR agency being able to promote it for you. And I imagine that's just not a skill set that a lot of people have or comes naturally to a lot of people. So that's got to be quite a hard and exhausting thing to do as well. But you just want people to listen to music, right?
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's yeah, as I said, it's not something that we did before this release, and I think we just try to find the fun in it. Like, it's another creative, outlet. You can create some cool imagery, using artwork that you've got, using footage that you've got, whatever it might be. Really just try and get everything out of it to just, as you said, I hate the word, but just get content out there, because it does actually make a difference. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, I think anyone with more than 2 brain cells hates the word content, but that's just the catch-all term for all this stuff, right? Exactly. But yeah, I think, like, for instance, all the imagery you've got around the album, well, the EP cover is great. Who did your EP cover? Where did that come from?
It's a company called Spearhead. He has done a lot of stuff now. So since we bought that artwork, he's done. He's definitely done work for Dying Fetus. He also did stuff for Download. like official merch for them
Yeah.
and stuff. So since look at him now. It's all because of Angron. No. No, he's doing really well. And it was, I think we went through that because it was quite different from a lot of the death metal artwork that we were seeing. And I don't just mean gore based stuff, because I mean we're not really that band. We're not really
yeah. Well, I mean, you write about Warhammer, so
yeah, and we're not misogynists. This sort of slam look, that's one thing, and then I don't know. It was just trying to go to sort of embrace that the Warhammer adjacent nerd elements of what we are as well, and
it's a really 80s thrash cover to me.
Yeah,
like it's got that sort of Ed Repka kind of vibe to it a little bit, like sort of Cell style cover.
No, it's I mean it's not classic artwork, but it is trying to be that in my that's kind of well, that was the appeal of it. So and it's purple, so that's fun.
The resurgence of death metal thing is really interesting to me though, because now, if I think back 10, 15 years ago, I've been to death metal since my mid-teens. And it felt like most of the bands I was listening to were sort of 90s bands to begin with. Death, Morbid Angel, Deicide. It didn't feel, and maybe this is my ignorance, it didn't feel like there was a whole lot going on. But you look around now and you've got Blood Incantation, Reaper, all these bands that weren't, come together in the last decade, playing these really big shows in places like the UK. This is a really big question, but what's going on there? Why is death metal having a moment there?
Tell us, Adam. Solve this mystery.
Like a shaman. I don't know really. It's strange. I mean, I just feel like around 2010 there was just this other wave of bands coming through. I mean, you're right in what you're saying. When I first got into death metal, there were the bands that were around and knew that I was listening to were not many. I mean, when I first got into death metal, I think there was the Haunted. I'm trying to think really
Well, it would be melodic death metal. It would be your Haunted, your Bottoms, your In Flames, Arch Enemy. That was the kind of death metal that was around when we were all teenagers.
Yeah, and I wasn't listening to other bands. I wasn't listening to Nile or Dying Fetus or bands like that then, because that was ooh, it's scary. That was too much for my age.
You weren't just putting on a bit of Necrophagus in the background. Nice bit of fermented offal discharge. It's good night.
And that came a couple of years later. But I don't know really. I don't know where it all came from. It definitely came from. There seems to be two real things. There's the US really had a big boom, and then also weirdly, kind of Finland had the other big boom that's sort of been in the last 10 years. A lot of bands coming through from Finland, which historically Finland is not what you associate. You don't think of that country with bands, but in the 90s there were actually a lot of bands that were sort of bubbling under the surface that really didn't get any notice until maybe the last sort of 10, 15 years, people actually paying attention to these bands, sort of uncovering these hidden gems. But I don't know. I don't know where it's come from. Maybe it was just everything was getting quite, if you think about the metalcore, deathcore scene, it was very produced, very highly and kind of soulless to me. And there were a lot of bands that I liked some of those bands, when I was first getting into heavier music, but I definitely had grown very tired of that sound. So I maybe it was just a response to that. I don't know. I think
there could be something in that. You kind of reach a critical point where you've had so much of that more produced side of extreme adjacent metal, and actually people just want something a bit more direct and to the point. And I think a bit more. I don't know. It's a bit general to say, but a bit more character to the sound as well. Yeah.
I've had a lot of those albums. I mean, again, anybody who doesn't really listen to death metal could easily just listen to two death metal albums by two different bands and say, well, that's the same. And I'd understand. But there was a lot of bands that were sounding very, very samey to me. It's sort of the post Lamb of God, post Killswitch Engages, and all those bands. So I just don't. Maybe it's just a reaction to that scene.
I think that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Before we go on to talking about a completely different band, what's next for Angron? What have you guys got lined up? Like, I assume you've got some gigs happening later this year. Is there more recording on the cards, or are you kind of just riding out Deathlands for as long as you can first?
We'll definitely be writing out all of this year for sure. Yeah. We're already writing. We're always writing. So we've already got a few songs for whatever the next release will be. And we definitely know it's not going to be as long as obviously.
It's not going to be 7 years this time. 6 years.
No, unless there's another pandemic coming.
That's bad.
Let's fingers crossed. Then we definitely know we'll be recording again a lot sooner. But yeah, we've got a few more shows coming up this this autumn for sure. Hopefully doing a little bit of a small tour, which will be fun. That's in the works. But we've got a few more shows locked in that will be announced soon. And also just going to some cities that we've not been to before.
Key question: are you coming to Cardiff? That's the important question for us.
We'd love to. There's no plans. I know. What is it? Is it Fuel?
Fuel Rock Club, who we mentioned quite a lot on this podcast, to be honest.
Maybe that's why I know it.
There's quite a good little death metal scene in South Wales, though.
Yeah, there really is.
Sodomized Cadaver.
I do. I'm aware of them.
Yeah, sort of.
You're going to remember that name.
Yeah.
It's a memorable, but that's a horrible name. Not the kind of name you could say around your parents,
No. You're not going to wear a sodomized
what gig are you
shirt.
going to tonight, son? I don't want to say.
But yeah, there's quite a good little scene down here, like particularly extreme metal, like punches above its weight, I think, for...
Yeah, again, it seems to be the main genre we have around here for some reason.
Right. Again, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Wales, or South Wales maybe generally, but like they had quite a big black metal scene, did it? Or am I way off?
Yeah, you're right. Like mostly based around feel. I mean, it seems like pretty much every month there's a local. I'm trying to think who, because all these bands sort of split up and then their members reconfigure. In other bands with like so. But there's like a Groner where Cardiff-based black metal.
Yeah.
They were sort of going places. There's quite a lot of good like black death, extreme metal, just noisy stuff, really, isn't it?
They all play Fuel. Fuel is a good place for atmospheric screaming, basically.
Yeah, we'd love to. I mean, certainly we've never played in Wales. I've never played in Scotland, much to my own shame. Shame on my family and bloodline. No, we'd love to. I think really basically what it is, again, it's just going back to that thing, is like the more you plug yourself, then the more when you approach promoters, or luckily we've been approached by quite a few as well, which is really sort of satisfying to play shows. And that's we'd love to, and fingers crossed. But so far Bristol's the closest we've got, I'm afraid.
It's pretty close, to be fair.
It's not too far.
Yeah, like just another 45 minutes and you're here. So you'll get that.
Who's that guy who puts on all the extreme metal gigs at Phil? It's the A27 promotion. Someone.
That rings a bell.
Yeah. He puts on loads of gigs at Phil. We'll give him a nudge.
Yeah.
We'll say,
book this band.
Yeah, get on it. Yeah.
You've got 2 guaranteed ticket sales, right?
Give him a nudge.
Okay.
We'll do it.
Yeah. What we should really do is become promoters ourselves, lose a lot of money, and just book bands that we want to see.
Yeah.
Even if the crowd just ends up being us. That'd be great.
Just us, yeah.
That's one of the things to do when we win the lotto.
Yeah, especially that feels more like a millionaire's folly than a business. Really,
or a midlife crisis. One of those.
All joking aside, that is something that we had to do when we first started.
Yeah.
I think the first show we ever played, we'd put it on. And we asked the biggest sort of band that was around in Brighton at that time in terms of playing venues of a similar size if they wanted to headline, and just did it that way. And I think a lot of bands do kind of resist doing that. I get why, because it can be scary doing all the organization and sort of making a bit of an investment of time and money into putting on a show. But if you want to play and you're struggling, then I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier to that will always be money, right? Like, yes, it'll be a time and effort investment, but you can kind of will yourself into doing that. But if there's a financial outlay to it, if you're a small band starting out, that's quite a big commitment, and it's quite a heavy thing to put on the band themselves, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it wasn't. We did it. We did it twice. All I think they were all sort of two of our earliest gigs, and yeah, there is a lot of. It's quite stressful, but but fortunately for us, they both shows worked out really well. I mean,
Yeah.
we were never. You put your ego aside. You don't headline. Don't put that on yourselves because you're already dealing with a lot. Just find a band that maybe you know them and also know that are maybe have a bit of a following.
Yeah.
Stick them as headliner and go for it. I would recommend it.
I think that's really sound advice, and yeah, I think checking your ego at the door is
for sure
the key bit that some bands might struggle with, but I think that's probably the way to do it. For sure.
If you're putting on a gig and you're on the bill, there's a reason you're not the headliner.
There's a reason you have to put on the gig.
There's a reason you're doing this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Well, it sounds like things are going really well for Angron, and it's really cool to see it reactivated and kind of like pushing forward. It sounds like there's a bunch of momentum behind you guys.
No, it's been really good, man. It's people, as I said, people have been responding really well, and the shows have been great. And it's just people sort of giving good feedback, and it's all been really good vibes since we've come back.
That's great. Well, we're going to abruptly change topic now to, I guess, what is sort of the focal point of this podcast. I mean, it's nice to talk about metal in general, but we're now going to talk about Iron Maiden because otherwise we're alienating our small listener base anyway.
Weird otherwise, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the theme of this show. But I mean, you're an Iron Maiden fan. That's part of the reason why we have you on the show. And I guess as a starting point, we wanted to talk a little bit about your journey with Iron Maiden. Like, how did you discover them? What do they mean to you? Like, you've kind of already touched on how they've been an influence on you. But yeah, how did you discover Maiden to start us off?
Well, it wasn't immediate. With my love didn't come immediately for them. I think I'm 35. I think we're all sort of similar ages.
Levin is 36 because he is a couple of months older than us.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let him live it down.
It's awful. I don't.
You are now officially, well, no, not quite in late 30s. I think 37 will be in late 30s for us. Right?
Great.
You're in mid 30s still. You're upper mid 30s.
I've had this conversation so much. Yeah, 36 is the last of the mids, and then it's game over, isn't it?
I can feel my bones crumbling to dust as we speak. It's Friday night. I haven't slept. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, how did you discover Maiden? You're 35.
Well, I mean, when I first got into metal, it was definitely the era of new metal. That was definitely the first things I got into. And then through things like Kerrang and Metal Hammer and MTV, found Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, Sepultura, all those bands. But when I first saw Maiden, and not just Maiden, but like Priest, Dio, King Diamond, as I hold my King Diamond t-shirt up to the camera.
Nice.
I couldn't take these people seriously. I was like, what are they doing?
Why are they wearing double denim?
It's the spandex and the song topics and everything. I was just like, I don't.
Just to be clear, you sing about Warhammer.
But then this is where it's all come round. And now I think they're the coolest guys of all time. But I just didn't get it. I didn't understand. So it did take me a couple more years, really, to get into that sort of more classic heavy metal, sort of used just a really general term. For those bands, including Maiden, it didn't come immediately for me. But I was having a think about this, obviously, before coming on. I think the first album I got, I don't know if you were going to ask this, I've jumped ahead, but the first album that I got was Peace of Mind.
Right.
And it was definitely because I can't remember the band. I think it might have been the Black Dahlia Murder. I was reading an interview with them and they were talking about that album.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe I should like really try to like this band that are regarded as maybe the best heavy metal band of all time. And I did. And I did instantly love them. Like from that point onwards, I instantly saw it was like an awakening. It was like, oh yeah, this is sort of, nah, I get it now.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting because like I think your experience is not atypical of our generation. Like around the time that we would all kind of be getting into music, nu metal was the big thing. But if you particularly were going into more extreme stuff as well, like I can totally see why a band like Maiden would seem like old people shit. Basically.
Yeah.
Like we've talked a lot on the podcast about how like Maiden, even in the 90s, were like early 90s or like end of 80s, were regarded as a dinosaur band already.
Which is wild, isn't it? It's just wild.
Which is wild, yeah. Considering they were like 35. but yeah, I think your experience of dismissing those classic bands is pretty standard. Like Blev and I, like cards on the table, we came into the old people music straight away as teenagers. But I think anyone else we knew who liked metal in our surrounding area was kind of like giving us the side eye quite a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, but what I think is interesting about your experiences, Adam, is that like basically the music I got into got progressively heavier over time. So I was into a lot of like 70s hard rock stuff for my dad, and then Sabbath was like, okay, that's a bit heavier than Zeppelin, and then Maiden, and then Metallica. It felt like quite a natural progression. I don't know how I would have felt about Maiden if I'd already, say, have heard Sepultura and loved Sepultura and then gone back to Maiden. Because for me, everything felt quite incremental. And then one day you're listening to Emperor and you're like, oh, how did I get here? Yeah. But yeah, it must have been quite an interesting experience having already kind of been immersed in the world of like this kind of much, extreme metal basically, and then almost taking a step back to Maiden.
It's strange though, isn't it? Like I know what you mean. Is then if I think about, I mean, obviously there's a real new metal resurgence going on over the last few years now, and a lot of bands really leaning hard into those influences. And some of the bands I can still sort of enjoy, and most I can't. But I would say at least with new metal, it was like a really aggressive sound. It it sounded heavy. I mean, that they had that at least. So to me, the actual transition then to listening to, it was definitely Pantera and Slayer and Sepultura first, before I discovered Metallica, which is also kind of weird thinking about it now.
That is, sort of back to front.
But they were all these bands were still existing.
Yeah.
The only like Metallica I would have heard was like, I don't know, Whiskey in the Jar.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just if I think about what was doing the rounds on MTV and all those channels.
Yeah.
And that wasn't doing anything for me then. So I was like, why does everybody love this band? So I get what you mean, but then I kind of sort of think about, if I think about how Slayer sounded and Sepultura sounded back then in the early 2000s, they didn't sound that wildly different from new metal. It was kind of made sense. But then Maiden have, even the videos, it's just like so much energy, and it's like, also, dare I say it, they're having fun, and they weren't grimacing all the time, and it was just so different from what I was listening to. But I do appreciate what you mean, because technically speaking, if you're trying to get into metal, Iron Maiden's not the worst starting point.
Yeah, but I take your point. Like, I think I had a slightly different journey to Bleven in some ways, in that like I probably started off with stuff like System of a Down, and then found Metallica, and then eventually found Maiden after those. So I guess, yeah, like stuff might find you at different points anyway. But I think particularly if you become immersed in something at a certain point you kind of get not sick of it, but you just want something different anyway. And so that might lead you to something less heavy. I mean, like nowadays I still listen to loads of metal, but I also balance that with a lot of jazz fusion. So, it's kind of like sometimes you just need variety.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody, if all you listen to is metal, you're kind of, you need to have a hard look at yourself.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Something's wrong.
Just gets a bit boring, right?
Yeah.
Of course, no offense to our listeners who
only
listen to Iron Maiden.
I'm sure they all listen to something else.
It's just the other people. Yeah. I don't know, Sam. Have you seen people commenting on Iron Maiden fans? I think they just listen to Iron Maiden.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Maiden are great, but you got to listen to some other stuff. Otherwise, you'll just wear out one thing, right? Right? Well, we've just alienated the whole listener base, haven't we?
Gone.
Good.
Gone.
Yeah, great. Well, so you mentioned Peace of Mind was your first Maiden album. What is your favorite Maiden album and why?
So this was hard. I spent far too long thinking about this, but
good. That is the right way to approach this very meaningful question.
Well, it's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
That is the correct answer.
Has everyone said that?
So far, everyone has said that. So everyone has been correct so far.
We agree. It's
just the best one.
Tends to, yeah.
But just in the interest of debate and fairness, why is that your favorite one? Other than it being the obvious absolute truth.
It wasn't an early one. It wasn't an album. I think for a lot of Maiden fans, it's definitely not like the first 3 or 4 albums they get.
Yeah.
I don't really know why that is, but it's got a bit of a weird sort of. People sort of think of it as a weird album, like a progressive, like a prog album. It's not really. It is, but it's not. It's not really any. To me, it's not really that much proggy than anything else they've ever done.
It just has synths. That's it.
Yeah,
that's all that makes it proggy.
Floyd, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's not Genesis.
No.
No, but like the sound. I mean, now thinking about things, now thinking about it, like you've asked me, it's definitely the sound of the album I just love. I don't know. I love the guitar sound.
Yeah.
I think there's a thing that, I mean, I know you guys have spoken about this a lot, but there's a thing on, I'm going to have to bring up the track listing before I say this, because I was going to say, there's a thing I've noticed with a lot of Iron Maiden albums, which is the sequencing is always, for almost every album for me, is kind of weird.
Yeah.
They make a lot of weird decisions with what's coming, first and second. And, okay, well, I'm sort of backtracking a little bit here, but Moonchild's a great opener, anyway.
Yeah.
I love that album opener. I think it's they've got a lot of really good openers, if I think about it, but that one's right up there with any of them. But yeah, I mean, Can I Play With Madness? Again, it's probably one of the first ones I'd heard. If I think about it now. The Evil That Men Do is definitely top 5 song for me, for Maiden, without a doubt. I know it's an obvious one, but it is definitely there. Prophecy's great. I mean, I'm just saying song titles now. The Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is definitely.
Just take us through every song and how it makes you feel.
Just think it's cool. No, but Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is also my favorite song for sure. Yeah. That's definitely my favorite Maiden song.
Yeah. I mean, we're both fanboys of this album, so I don't think we can give an unbiased opinion at this point.
And it's a strange one, isn't it? Because it's definitely not their heaviest.
No, absolutely.
They've got a lot of other heavier albums. I mean, I would say pretty much every album that's sort of come before this is heavier. I just love the sound, and it's one I just return to over and over again. I think partly because it's not Number of the Beast, it's not Power Slave, it's not Peace of Mind, which I listened to so much when I was younger. So it's not those. It's definitely one of it's definitely that and Caught Somewhere in Time. Is it Caught Somewhere in Time or is it Somewhere in Time?
Somewhere in Time, and then the song is called Somewhere in Time.
I can do that. Excuse my language.
It's the whole Slayer, Raining Blood.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I think you touch on an interesting point of like a lot of people's way into Maiden is those formative albums, like particularly Number of the Beast, but then your Peace of Mind and your Power Slaves are like usually pretty early Maiden albums for people. And then you kind of wear those out to death and then you might discover like Seventh Son or Somewhere in Time. I wonder if that's part of the reason why something like Seventh Son latches itself onto people, is that it's a bit different to those albums while still being a Maiden album, clearly, but like it feels a bit newer and a bit fresher because you've listened to Number of the Beast too many times.
Yeah, and I think also some of those songs. I mean, I've only seen Maiden twice, sadly, but a lot of those songs, you'll probably correct me, but a lot of them don't get into the set list regularly, right? Like, this,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's the kind of. I don't. Does Can I Play with Madness even get played that much?
Quite, yeah. They played it on the tour the year before last, right?
Yeah, but you're not guaranteed to hear it.
No. I've seen it at least twice.
Yeah, it's not like a staple.
Yeah.
But then you've also got Infinite Dreams, that was the single off that album that they've not played live since 1988. And
wow. Is it a single?
Yeah, it was the single Infinite Dreams.
It was the last single, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think actually it was a live single.
Yeah.
Infinite Dreams live. Oh, no. I'm... Nah.
No, I think it was a live single.
Yeah, it wasn't
it?
But, you know,
made in England.
But they put a video out to go with it and stuff.
Yeah.
They're not playing it live in, what's that, like almost 4 decades at this point?
It's quite a while.
Yeah. You know, so there's... And like Only the Good Die Young's never been played live.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's scandalous, because I think that's a great...
Yeah, that's a banger.
Yeah.
It's strange to me, a band like Maiden having songs off these albums that haven't been played. I don't know how many more there are, but I'm sure there are a couple more. But like off their classic albums, still having songs that have never been played live is weird.
I guess they just have so much material at this point, and increasingly that material, individual songs have got longer and longer. There's only so much time in a set list, right?
Well, but before we get on, because I thought it would be interesting to have your take on more recent Maiden material, but talking about, you've seen Maiden a couple of times live. When did you get to see Maiden live? What tour was that on?
I had to, because my old brain, I had to look this up. But I saw them. I saw them on the Book of Souls tour.
Oh, great!
Okay.
Yeah.
At the O2, and I had a look at the set list again, and they played Wrathchild, Children of the Damned, Power Slave, and Wasted Years. I mean, looking at all this stuff, it looks like they do mix it up a lot, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, there's not many that you're...
I remember that Book of Souls tour being really surprised to see them dropping Power Slave in that set list, which is great. I was like, this is... Yeah, but I felt like quite almost like... It seems weird calling it a deep cut, because the title track of one of their most famous albums, but it's not the kind of thing they play all that often.
My memory of that was like... Because obviously it's the Book of Souls, I was like, are they just playing it because it's like a pyramid?
Yeah,
that sounds about right.
Maybe.
And I think maybe that I think he actually had a Mexican wrestler's mask on
for Power Slave.
That rings a bell.
Power Slave, yeah.
Why?
Sure. It's one thing having like the not Pharaoh mask, but whatever that sort of.
No, it wasn't even the Fevry mask.
Fevry mask,
No, it was actually like a Mexican wrestler's
mask.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah, it's an odd call, but.
Yeah,
good song.
yeah, true. He can wear whatever mask if he's playing Power Slave. What was the second time you saw them then?
It was, if I'm correct, it was the following year on the Legacy of the Beast tour.
Was that at the O2 as well? I was at that.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So I've only seen them in one venue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great venue to see.
You were at that?
Yeah, I was at that Legacy of the Beast O2 gig, yeah.
Yeah, well, again, I looked and, yeah, I don't think they played any. I've written this down, so I'm assuming they didn't play it on the previous show I saw them. But they played Where Eagles Dare, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Wicker Man, Flight of Icarus. So I was having a great time.
Yeah, it was such a good set list.
Yeah,
that's generally one of my favourite Maiden set lists, actually, because it was
right
the variety of it, like across all eras. But
there's a lot of variety, but it was also we're going to play the songs people want to hear.
Yeah,
which Maiden don't always do.
No, and I mean, I do admire it, because they do, obviously, when they release an album, they really do play the material, and that's great. I mean, I maybe we'll talk about their newer sort of albums, but at least they do it. You know, they're not a band that are just rolling out the hits and the fan favorites. They are actually going out there and standing sort of behind their new releases, and you got to admire that, no matter what you really think of the albums themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I have a patchy view of some of those 21st century albums, but I think in order, and as many people do, right? But I think
we get into that, because I'm always interested in people's takes on it. So
just before we get into that, I was just going to say, I think I agree with you, Adam. I think there is still something admirable about standing behind your new material and making sure it's part of the show. Like, even if I don't necessarily want to hear anything from Senjutsu, like the fact that you're committed to it shows that you're not just a nostalgia act. You're an artist trying to promote your new artistic work. And I think that's commendable, even if all the songs are too long.
Yeah, and there's not. I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, I like grindcore, so you can imagine what Rime of the Ancient Mariner does for me. Yeah. Like, some of, I mean, there are very long songs in their most recent albums, but I do think it's sort of admirable. I mean, a lot of bands sort of comparable size and eras, like AC/DC. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing them later this year, but I don't know. I don't know any albums beyond The Razor's Edge.
Yeah,
I don't know any. That's what I mean. Like, I
there are quite a few of them, aren't there? But I don't even.
There are.
I like, I've not listened to Rock or Bust. Is it called Rock or Bust?
Yeah.
It'll be something like that if it isn't.
Yeah.
There was like Power or something.
Power Up.
Yeah, Power Up.
Yeah.
And
Stiff Upper Lip.
These just sound like Spinal Tap albums now.
Like, there's the one about a train, and I'm assuming that's thinly veiled thing about his penis
as well. Black Ice.
Oh, yeah.
One with the train on it.
Oh, that's the one with the train on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I mean, I don't really like AC/DC to begin with, but I couldn't name a single song. I like their hits. I'm just not into them, right? Like, you put on Thunderstruck, it's a good night, but I'm just not a big AC/DC guy.
No,
AC/DC, one of those bands that they put out a new album and the press say, "Oh, this is great," and I'm that sucker. Goes, "Oh, well, maybe they have made another really great album." I listened to it once and I go, it's all right. It's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's the same but worse.
Yeah,
it's an album.
I have no reason to ever listen to this ever again, but it's fine. Are there any of the 21st century made albums you are in on, Adam, or is it just? Are you
no. I mean, it definitely is the 80s stuff. But I mean, even then, there are some questionable releases to me. Well, maybe not 80s, 90s. I'm getting my decades mixed up. But yeah, Dance of Death for sure. I know you guys are talking about that now.
Again, the correct answer.
Yeah, it's a great album, and that was the first. I mean, similar to you guys, that was the first album I got into while already sort of knowing about them. Like, Brave New World came out before Brave New World, I don't think I was listening to anything beyond Slipknot when that came out. So when Dance of Death came out, artwork aside, it's great. It's still a great album. And then I think it was A Matter of Life and Death after that. Yep. Was it? It was quite a while though, wasn't it? Was there a big gap, or was it not a big gap?
It was 3 years, right?
3 years.
Was that it?
Yeah.
But I mean,
we were a long time when you're that age.
We were teenagers, right? So 3 years feels like
desperately waiting for that.
Whereas nowadays, 3 years seems to just go in the blink of an eye. But I think that's because we're getting old, basically.
Yeah, but that one's great as well. And then this is where I start to not dislike them necessarily, but So the next one is I can't remember the name of the album.
Final Frontier.
Final Frontier. Yeah. Yes. Just as you were mouthing it. Yeah, that album has some good songs. I remember. Is it Star Killer?
Starblind.
That's it.
Yeah, that's a great song.
That's a good song. And because I did listen to that a little while ago again. I think it was when I was listening to your podcast. I was like, I think you mentioned it. And I was like, oh, should maybe give that one a blast because I don't really remember it at all. And there was some good stuff on there. Is it El Dorado?
Yeah, I love El Dorado.
Yeah, I think that's a good song.
Yeah.
So I think that album's got a lot of merit. I think that album's maybe, I don't really know how it's regarded in terms of like Maiden circles, but I know in the wider scheme of sort of the wider metal community, nobody really talks about that album. And it seems a bit unfair. But after that, it's Book of Souls next, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not.
And I'm not. There are some good songs on it, but for the most part, it's not. It's not for me. And then I think the less we say about Shinjitsu's, but yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think either of us are going to argue with any of what you said, to be honest.
I think that's pretty much. Yeah.
That's
We don't even need to do the rest of the podcast episodes, to be honest. That's kind of summed it up, really.
You've got two more good ones to talk about, and then
a
really patchy one, and then
I just remember them playing. Yeah, I remember them playing a lot of Book of Souls on the tour.
Yeah,
at least 3 or 4, and I remember being disappointed at how much I was hearing. but that was kind of naive of me, because again, like I just said, they've always been that band that's going to play their songs, the new songs. So
yeah. But I also get that. I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast before, but the first time I saw Maiden was on the A Matter of Life and Death tour, where they played the entirety of that album and then like 6 other songs. And like, I didn't dislike that album. I thought it was a good album, but I wanted to see more than 6 prime era Maiden songs. So I'm still, like 20 years later, slightly salty about that gig, even though I respect the decision. I just think it was wrong, you know?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I said it was it's been a while since I listened to it, but that album, I don't want to hear all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to hear all of anyone's album.
All of most albums live,
yeah.
Right? Like there's occasional exceptions, but for the most part, most albums have a dip in them somewhere. You gotta don't bring that to a live show.
No, I agree.
So on that note then, what's your least favorite Maiden album?
Oh gosh, I mean, this one's no time. I mean, this may be surprising, but it's No Prayer for the Dying.
Ah, okay.
Oh.
I just can't stand that album. It's just I always think it starts with Be Quick or Be Dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't, does it? That's Fear of the Dark.
Yeah. I always make that same mistake as well, because I was just thinking it starts with Be Quick or Be Dead, right?
But yeah, so I shouldn't hate it that much because it starts with that, and that's a great song. But it doesn't start with that. I don't even remember what's on it, but it's so bland an album, and it's so weird. It's such a weird album. If you just the run they were on, to then release that, and Fear of the Dark isn't a perfect album by any stretch of the imagination.
No,
but it's got these 2 bookends that are just as good to me as anything that they've ever released.
Yeah.
But then this album is just like I don't know what happened. It's just production wise, it's not interesting. The songs aren't interesting. Tonally, it's all over the shop.
Yeah.
You can see how much more passionate I am about the one I hate than I am the one I love.
No, but I think the 2 albums you've picked are for your favorite and least favorite are right next to each other.
Yeah,
right?
That's so weird.
Yeah. So to go from Seventh Son to the drop of No Prayer is, I think there's like a sort of quality whiplash that comes with that. Yeah, I mean, I think that album's pretty pants.
Had somebody left?
There's good moments, but it's mostly pants. Yeah, Adrian left.
Okay. Yeah.
It kind of just feels like the bottom falls out of the band for a little bit because of that. And Bruce is also, I think at that point, kind of like, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. And that takes a couple of albums for him to finally leave.
Yeah, and you know, Fear of the Dark to me isn't a very good album either. If you think about it as an album, to me, it's not a very good album. And I'd put Brave New World or Dance of Death above that album easily, despite it having those 2 songs that are 10 out of 10 songs.
I think that's fair. Like, it's not a consistent album. There's really high moments, but there's a lot of dreck.
Yeah.
It's just those 2 moments are so good, and then I just remember that album is just a bit of a blur to me, really. It's just unfortunately, it's No Prayer for the Dying. I think you guys commented on it as well, but the artwork is just so unmemorable as well. It's just nothing about it is of the same standard.
I think that's fair. It feels like quite a throwaway album in a lot of ways to me.
Yeah, and I get the feeling Maiden, on the run they were on, at that point in their career, had a bit of hubris. They sort of thought, oh, we can just get away with just chucking an album out. You know, we'll record it quickly, record it cheaply, just write a few songs. We're great. Everyone's going to love it. And then that totally destabilized them for the next 10 years almost. No, this isn't very good at all.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean it's very good? You love it. It's like, no.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, actually. That album was very much the beginning of quite a bad period for Maiden for a best part of a decade, really, until Brave New World.
So when did that come out? 90 or 89? Or?
Was
90.
it? It was 90,
90.
It was 90. Then you have Fear of the Dark, and then you have the Blaze era, and then Bruce comes back 99.
Yeah.
It's obviously, this is obviously all hindsight, and this is not an original take whatsoever, but
do you think we have any original takes on this show? Like, we're talking about a 50-year-old band. Like, all the discussions have happened. Yeah.
But if you think about what's about to happen to all of heavy metal, Iron Maiden were just going to be completely like adrift in the scene. Like, it's so at odds, the Maiden look and the sound, so at odds with what everything about to come was. I mean, even though, like, the Black Album was coming, which is still like a classic heavy metal sound, it's still so different from Maiden that I don't think the writing was on the wall, but it's you know, as great as Seventh Son is, it's everything's about to change.
I think that's true, and I definitely think it's like 1990 was the end of an era for a certain type of metal, but it's made worse by the fact that Maiden put out an album that's a bit of a throwaway. Whereas if you compare that to like Priest, they put out Painkiller around the same time, and that has gone on to be a huge classic, and at the time was really well regarded. And like that is a cool album.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great album.
But it didn't do much for Priest commercially at the time.
No, but critically,
critically, and in terms of their legacy, obviously, like that album's a huge deal, but it wasn't enough to save Priest.
Yeah,
no, they fell apart after that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like, that was the end of them for a little while, basically, in terms of, you know, the sort of wider perception. It didn't. Yeah, you're right. It didn't save them.
And you made the point about Metallica, like about to release the Black Album, and then becoming mega big, but I guess they also, like, the Black Album was a shift, and everything after that was even more of a shift. Megadeth shifted quite a bit, like they put out Rust in Peace, and then Countdown going more commercial and stuff. So yeah, I think you have a fair point about like the writing was on the wall a bit for a lot of those bands.
Yeah, but I mean, God, did they at that album?
yeah. I think that's a fair pick for least favorite album.
I think there are worse. There are maybe. I don't think there are worse. But the Blaze era gets, obviously, that gets a lot of flack, and I think I don't like those albums, but I think unfairly so. Like, it's not his fault.
Yeah. I don't think we're massive Blaze apologists, right? Like, none of it's his fault. There's
some really good songs as well.
There's some good stuff there. There's also some horrendous stuff on there. But yeah, I think it's which album bothers you the most, and I think No Prayer is a pretty fair choice, to be honest. Like, I probably have more animosity for No Prayer than I do, say, The X Factor. Just because it's such a drop in quality. Yeah.
I mean, it's still Bruce as well, so you think, I don't know, this should be better. Yeah.
It feels like a real negative script. We can't end on that.
Yeah, we can't
now.
I hate them.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, folks.
We normally go
podcast here.
We normally go on to like non-Maiden albums we're listening, but I feel like we should have a positive Maiden thing to end with.
Are you going to see them this year, Adam?
No, I'm not, sadly.
Oh, no, that's not positive either.
Boo. Well, what we usually do ending episodes now when we remember is to talk about albums we've been listening to. So we picked like one or two albums that we've been listening to recently that aren't Iron Maiden related. Is there anything you've been listening to recently, Adam, you want to share?
Yeah, there's I'm just going to be very stereotypical and pick a really horrible death metal album, but there's a band called Corpus Awful, as in
nice.
OFFAL.
Yeah.
Very
as opposed to Corpus Awful.
Yes.
which would be a great spoof band.
If they ever get big enough, that'll be the tribute act.
Yeah.
They just a self-titled album. It was basically members of a previous death metal band called Cerebral Rot, equally as disgusting. But they are they're such good names. But they're very very Carcass, very Autopsy influenced. Really like gurgly, deep vocals. Very sloppy, groovy riffs, really disgusting. They're really good. So I'd recommend that for basically no one that listens to this podcast. And
I think that there's probably a broad enough church on this podcast, people who will listen to some really gnarly shit. So
it's that. So I'd recommend that. And then I'd also recommend, it's not an album because they haven't released it yet, but a band called Tribunal. From the Canadian sort of doom death metal band. Think like Candlemass, My Dying Bride sort of vibes. They've got a song called Armored and Shadow, and I've been listening to that a lot. They're really good. This will be their second album, I think. But yeah, if you're into your doom, if you're into your like doom death, then I really, really recommend them. That's Tribunal.
Cool. 2 strong recommendations with the name Tribunal is much more, not even mellow, just much more formal.
Administrative
for a death, much more administrative name than I expect from a death metal band. It's like calling a band Legal Papers.
I've never actually
summons.
You've been served.
I'll never listen to them the same.
Yeah, Lev, what have you been listening to?
I'm actually going to usually I bring an album, but I'm actually going to bring a song.
Just one song
because it's a standalone release, which is the song Ithaca by Ithaca, which is their swan song. It's not going to tease an album or anything. It's just a standalone release as their farewell song as they have split up now. Their last dates are gone, but the final song they put out as well is just so good.
Yeah,
it was just quite different. So you're like, that's so frustrating because you're pointing to all these other musical avenues you still had left to explore, and doing it so well, and you're just leaving us this one thing and going right.
I'll need to check that out.
Yeah, it's great. Like Ithaca by Ithaca. Absolutely killer song.
Very bittersweet choice.
It is, and it's the sort of thing that if they were using that to tease a new album, I'd be going, oh great, for this.
And like we've talked before about UK metal. Kind of feeling like a lot of stuff's just disappearing after a last decade of lots of bands coming out, like your Ithacas or your Employed to Serves or your Svalbards. Svalbard have now announced they're splitting, which also sucks, and they're going to release one last song as well. It's all pretty bleak.
Yeah, that's a real shame as well that they just announced that.
Yeah.
What have you been listening to then, Sam?
Well, I mean, sort of along the same lines, except hopefully they're not splitting up. I've been listening to the new Employed to Serve album quite a lot recently because I didn't listen to it when it came out because I live at least several months behind everything that happens in current day. But yeah, that's a cool album. It's a lot more melodic than their previous one. Still a lot of agginess, but also a few more hooks. And that's how you get me. I'm a sucker for a big hook. So yeah,
he's just like a giant fish, isn't he?
That's all I want. Yeah,
that's all anyone wants.
Exactly. Bait me and give me a good hook. I'm in.
Excellent. So, how do we usually finish the Sam?
I can't remember, and I was trying to. I think we finished by saying thank you so much, Adam, for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
It's been really interesting to chat to you. It's been really cool to hear about Angron and how that's all going, and also to hear about your experience with Maiden. I think we also usually say to listeners, you can find Maiden Voyages on various social media accounts, such as what are we on? We're still on X for some reason at Maiden Pod. We're on Blue Sky at Maiden Pod. We're now on Instagram officially at Maiden Pod.
I mean, unfortunately, it'll be too late for the people to check this out now. But if you do follow us on Instagram, you'll see a lovely picture of my I Maiden pajamas I put in our stories today.
Lovely. Maybe we should promote that to the grid.
That's the kind of scintillating content.
That's the kind of content we produce.
This is what I'm talking about. This is
Forget your important like band image and like having a look and feel. Blevin in his Iron Maiden pajamas having a cup of coffee. It's
what the people want.
Is it? I saw that this morning and I threw up in my mouth. So you could also email us at maidenvoyagerspod@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts about Iron Maiden or death metal. We're a broad church. We'll listen to anything.
Yeah.
And I will reply to the email because Blevin never checks the inbox. But yeah.
It even exists, to be honest.
Exactly. You set it up.
I did set it up.
We didn't need an email address. Anyway. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Adam. It's been really great chatting to you. And to anyone listening, we will see you soon. Or, well, we won't see you. You know, I'm leaving. I'm closing this. This is done. That's the end of the episode. Everyone leave.
Thanks, boys.